behind schedule," my mother announced as she emerged onto the front steps, dragging her luggage behind her. I checked the time display on my car's dashboard. It read 6:02 a.m., just 2 minutes past our agreed time. "Sorry, Mom," I replied, putting on a fake smile. I stepped out of the vehicle to assist with the bags, but that's when I spotted her. My sister Lauren walking out of the house with her own suitcase trailing behind her. My expression became rigid. "What's happening here?" I inquired, struggling to maintain composure in my voice. My mother faced me with an expression that was inappropriately bright given the circumstances. "Oh, Violet, we've chosen to have Lauren join us in your place. She's been under so much pressure recently and truly requires this vacation." My heart constricted. "In my place, Mom. I've been organizing this for years and covered all the expenses." She dismissed my concern with a casual wave, as though I'd mentioned something insignificant. "We appreciate it, dear, but you're constantly buried in work. You can plan another trip later. Lauren requires this right now." Lauren showed no signs of shame. She simply smiled smugly, shifting her stance. "I'm grateful you're being so understanding, sis," she said, her voice thick with insincere appreciation. I gazed at both of them, my pulse racing. My father emerged shortly after, refusing to meet my eyes as he passed me his luggage. "This is incredible," I said, my voice trembling. "This was meant to be our journey, something for me to experience with you." "It remains that way," my mother said cheerfully, "just with Lauren taking your place. Don't create drama over this, Violet. Your sister genuinely needs a vacation. My name is Violet, and for 2 years I've been putting in extra hours, setting aside every available dollar to provide my parents with an unforgettable journey. Airplane tickets, upscale accommodations, private guided experiences. I had organized every aspect right down to the final restaurant booking. But standing there in my parents' driveway, observing my sister climb into my car's rear seat, I came to a realization I'd been denying for years. Regardless of how much energy I invested in their view, Lauren would forever be their priority. I tightened my jaw, suppressing the harsh response that was ready to spill out. Instead, I managed a strained smile and popped open the trunk. "Let's head out then," I said, my voice emotionless. If they chose to favor her over me, that was fine. They could travel with her, but I wouldn't allow them to relish it. The journey to the airport was oppressively silent, broken only by Lauren's constant babbling. "Oh wow, Mom, did you catch that TikTok about Paris? I'm so excited to go shopping there. Do you think we'll have time, or will the scheduled tours consume our entire day?" My grip on the steering wheel intensified as I kept my eyes fixed ahead, forcing myself to remain quiet. My mother chuckled gently. "Naturally we'll have time. We'll sort it out once we arrive there." I bit down on the inside of my cheek. Once we arrived there, they didn't even realize I was no longer included in that "we." At some point, my father cleared his throat. "We appreciate you driving us, Violet. I realize this situation might seem strange." I glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "Strange? That's a curious way to describe it, Dad." He remained silent, just shifting uncomfortably in his seat, likely regretting that he'd spoken. Lauren leaned forward from the back, her voice irritating. "You're not upset, are you? I mean, this is really generous of you, allowing me to go. I could never have paid for this myself." I clenched my teeth and managed a tight smile. "Of course, Lauren. Have a wonderful trip." When we arrived at the airport departure area, my patience was nearly exhausted. As I helped remove their luggage, my mother embraced me. "Thank you for being understanding, sweetheart. This is very meaningful to us and to Lauren." I nodded rigidly. "Sure, Mom." Lauren beamed as she rolled her suitcase toward the entrance. "Thanks, Violet. You're amazing." I stood watching them vanish into the terminal, my chest heavy with anger and pain. The drive home passed in a haze. I replayed our conversation repeatedly, each word stinging more deeply than before. "This is very meaningful to Lauren. You're not upset, are you? You're constantly buried in work." I parked in my driveway and remained in the car briefly, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Then, without hesitation, I marched inside, grabbed my laptop, and accessed every travel account I'd used for the trip bookings. Hotel reservations cancelled. Tours refunded. Airline upgrades revoked. I stared at the confirmation emails accumulating in my inbox, feeling the tension in my chest begin to subside. They wanted to bring Lauren instead of me. Fine. But they wouldn't be enjoying 5-star accommodations or exclusive tours on my budget. When I closed my laptop, a feeling of contentment washed over me. They could explain the situation to the hotel staff in Paris themselves. I was finished being their pushover. The phone calls began immediately after their plane touched down. My phone vibrated constantly as I unpacked my suitcase, the one I'd carefully prepared for a trip that was no longer mine. The irony wasn't lost on me as I rehung my dresses and neatly arranged my shoes back on the rack. The buzzing persisted, filling the room with its persistent sound. I sighed, picked up the phone and looked at the screen. My mom's name appeared, along with several missed calls and messages. I unlocked the device and read through the texts. "Violet, what's wrong? The hotel refuses to check us in. The reservation is gone. Call me right away. Violet, this isn't amusing. Fix this immediately." A laugh slipped out before I could control it. Fix this. They genuinely believed I'd rush in and rescue them after their actions. The phone buzzed again, this time with Lauren calling. I let it ring through, only for her to leave a message. "Violet, this is so childish," she snapped, her voice full of arrogance. "We're stranded here because of you. You need to contact the hotel and resolve this now." I rolled my eyes and erased the voicemail without hearing the rest. 4 years I'd been their problem solver, the one who handled every mistake and covered for every shortcoming. Not anymore. Finally, I chose to answer, if only to end the constant stream of calls. My mom's voice hit me like an angry wave as soon as I picked up. "Violet, what have you done? The hotel claims the reservation was cancelled, and none of the tours are scheduled anymore." I allowed her to vent briefly, then calmly responded, "I cancelled them." There was a long, shocked silence before she hissed, "Why would you do that?" "Oh, I'm not sure," I said, my tone heavy with sarcasm. "Perhaps because you decided to bring Lauren on my trip? You should be grateful I still drove you to the airport. We assumed you'd understand," she snapped. "Understand what?" asked, my voice getting louder. "That years of saving and planning were meaningless because Lauren needed a break. That my hard work meant nothing to you. Well, guess what, Mom? I don't understand and I don't want to." I hung up before she could respond and switched off my phone, tossing it onto the sofa. The silence that followed was wonderful, and I felt like I could finally breathe again. If they wanted to prioritize Lauren, fine. But they could handle the rest of the trip without me. The quiet only lasted 1 day. By the next morning, my phone was buzzing again with calls and messages. Initially, I ignored them. I spent the day tidying the house and catching up on work, but curiosity eventually got the better of me. By evening, I opened my phone and prepared for the storm of messages. From my mom. "Violet, you've crossed the line. Your sister is crying and your father is livid. We can't access any of the hotels you reserved." From Lauren. "You're behaving like a child. I don't understand why you're making this such a huge issue. Just fix it already." And finally, from my dad. "We need to have a conversation. This isn't acceptable." I put the phone down, shaking my head. For years, I'd been the one to resolve issues, ensuring everyone was comfortable and content. Now that I'd stepped back, they were lost. I made myself some tea and sat at the kitchen table, letting my anger simmer. How dare they expect me to clean up their mess? How dare they act like I was the one at fault? The next call came within minutes, and this time I answered. "Violet," my mom barked before I could speak. "This has stopped being funny. Or stuck. Do you realize how humiliating this is?" I took a slow sip of my tea. Humiliating? You think this is humiliating? Try saving for years, planning every detail, and then being told you're not even part of the trip you funded. "Stop being so dramatic," she snapped. Lauren needed this more than you did. And now she can figure it out, I said firmly. You made your choice, Mom. You wanted to take Lauren instead of me. Fine. But don't expect me to finance her vacation. We're family, she hissed. We don't treat each other this way. I let out a bitter laugh. Funny, I was thinking exactly the same thing. Lauren's voice came through in the background, whining. Mom, just hang up on her. She's being impossible. That was the last straw. Enjoy your trip, I said, my tone icy. Oh wait, you can't because it's not your trip. It was mine, and now it belongs to no one. Goodbye. I hung up before she could respond and turned my phone off again. For the rest of the evening, I felt a strange mixture of anger and relief. Anger that they'd put me in this position, but relief that I'd finally defended myself. They could call me dramatic all they wanted. For the first time in my life, I wasn't allowing them to take advantage of me. The following days were blissfully peaceful. With my phone turned off, I finally had space to think clearly, free from the constant guilt trips and accusations. I spent my mornings drinking coffee on my back porch, enjoying the tranquility I'd longed for. My afternoons were filled with work and catching up on small projects I'd been postponing, things that reminded me how capable I was when I wasn't weighed down by their endless demands. But by the third day, curiosity overcame me. I turned my phone back on to discover more than a dozen voicemails waiting. The first few from my mom grew increasingly frantic with each one. Violet, you must call me back immediately. This has gone too far. I can't believe you're doing this. You've embarrassed us. We're your parents. How could you treat us like this? Then came Lauren's messages, full of the same entitled attitude she'd always displayed. This is so petty, even for you. You're destroying everything. Just fix it, Violet. And finally my dad's voice, quieter but equally pointed. Violet, I don't understand what's come over you. Call us back so we can resolve this. I hesitated before listening to the final voicemail, a lengthy one from my mom. Her voice was quieter this time, tinged with frustration and exhaustion. Violet, she began, we're back at the airport now. The trip is ruined, and I hope you're satisfied with yourself. Your sister is devastated, and your father and I are. Well, disappointed doesn't even begin to describe it. Call us when you're ready to talk. I deleted the voicemails without responding. I wasn't ready to talk, and honestly, I didn't know if I ever would be. This wasn't a one-time error. It was the culmination of years of them putting Lauren first and expecting me to accept it with a smile. As the hours passed, I found myself reflecting on all the times I'd been overlooked or dismissed. Every holiday where Lauren's desires dictated the plans. Every family gathering where my achievements were treated as afterthoughts. This trip had been the breaking point, but the cracks had been forming for years. That evening, Grace stopped by unexpectedly, carrying 2 coffee cups and an unmistakable look of curiosity. I heard about what happened, she said, setting the coffee on the table. Your mom called me yesterday. Course she had. My mom had always been skilled at recruiting allies when she wanted to guilt me into compliance. And, asked, taking a sip. Grace shrugged, a sly smile crossing her face. I told her you were probably busy and would get back to her when you were ready. I laughed, shaking my head. You're the best. No, you're the best, she said, her tone suddenly serious. Because you finally stood up for yourself. I know how difficult that is, Violet. Don't let them pull you back down. Her words stayed with me long after she left. Grace was right. I'd spent too long bending over backward to please people who never seemed to care about my efforts. It was time to break that pattern once and for all. By the time the weekend arrived, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was joined by something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Freedom from their endless expectations. Freedom from being the family's problem solver. Freedom to finally live on my own terms. But as expected, the silence didn't last. It was Sunday afternoon when I finally received a call that I decided to answer. This time it was my dad. Violet, he began, his voice heavy with weariness. Your mom wanted me to call. She believes you'll listen to me. Go ahead, I said, leaning back in my chair. He let out a sigh. Look, this whole situation has gotten out of control. Your mom's upset, Lauren's furious, and... well, it's just a mess. But you're better than this. I stiffened, his words igniting fresh anger. Better than what, Dad? Standing up for myself. Refusing to let you walk all over me again. That's not what I meant, he said quickly. It's just... you've always been the reasonable one, the one who keeps everything together. This isn't like you. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. You're right, it's not like me, because I'm not bending over backward to clean up your mess anymore. He paused, and for a moment I thought he might finally see my perspective. But then he said, you're punishing the entire family over one decision. Is that really fair? Fair? I repeated, my voice rising. You want to discuss fair? Was it fair when you and Mom decided I wasn't important enough to be part of the trip I planned? Was it fair when you replaced me with Lauren like I didn't matter? That's not what we were trying to do, he said, his tone defensive now. We just thought Lauren needed it more. Of course you did, I snapped. You always think she needs more attention, more support, more of everything. And I'm always the one expected to sacrifice for her. Not anymore. The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally he said, I don't know what you want me to say. I don't need you to say anything, I replied, my voice steady. I just need you to understand that I'm done being the afterthought. From now on I come first. Goodbye, Dad. I ended the call and set the phone down, my hands shaking. For the rest of the day I allowed myself to feel everything. Anger, sadness, relief. It wasn't easy, but it felt like the beginning of something new. I wasn't the family's fixer anymore. And I wasn't going to be. They could figure out how to clean up their own messes. When my parents and Lauren finally returned, I was waiting for them at their house. I'd parked in their driveway, sipping coffee and feeling surprisingly calm as I watched their taxi arrive. As they stepped out, dragging their suitcases behind them, their faces showed a mixture of exhaustion and irritation. Lauren was the first to speak. Well, I hope you're satisfied, Violet. I raised an eyebrow, remaining seated on the porch swing. Satisfied with what? Our trip was a disaster, my mom snapped, waving her hand as if to dismiss the entire experience. We spent the whole week staying in shabby hotels and eating awful food because we couldn't afford anything decent. And don't get me started on the tours, Lauren chimed in, crossing her arms. Oh wait, there weren't any. Do you know how embarrassing it was to show up and be told there was no reservation? I took another sip of coffee, letting their complaints wash over me. Sounds terrible, I said finally, my voice calm. But you wanted to take Lauren, remember? I'm sure you all had some great bonding time. That's not the point, my mom shot back, her voice rising. You knew we couldn't afford all the things you'd planned. You set us up to fail. I stood up, setting my mug down on the small table next to me. No, Mom, I didn't set you up for anything. I planned a trip for the three of yous. Something special I'd been saving for years. You're the ones who decided to exclude me at the last second. My dad finally spoke up, his tone quieter but no less accusatory. You didn't have to cancel everything, Violet. That was extreme. Was it? I asked, folding my arms. Why should I have paid for a trip I wasn't even invited to? If Lauren needed it so badly, you should have planned it yourselves. You're lucky I didn't cancel the return flight. Lauren rolled her eyes. You're so dramatic. It's just money, Violet. And you're so entitled, I shot back, my patience finally snapping. Do you have any idea how much work and sacrifice went into planning that trip? Or do you just assume things magically appear for you because someone else handles it? They stood there, stunned into silence for a moment. I've spent years being the responsible one, I continued, my voice steady but firm. The one who fixes things, plans things, makes sure everything runs smoothly. And you've spent just as long taking it all for granted. That's not fair, my mom started, but I held up a hand to stop her. No, Mom. What's not fair is how you treated me. You chose Lauren over me like always. So I chose to stop being your doormat. You didn't want me on the trip. Fine. But you don't get to enjoy the benefits of my hard work without me. I grabbed my bag from the porch swing and turned to leave. I'm glad you're back safely, but don't expect things to go back to the way they were. I'm done. As I walked to my car, I heard them calling after me, their voices a mix of anger and guilt. But I didn't look back. The drive home from my parents' house felt strange, peaceful. 4 years, every visit had left me emotionally drained, but this time I felt lighter. I'd finally said everything I'd been holding in, and for once, I wasn't worried about their reaction. When I got back to my house, I made a cup of tea and sat on the couch, replaying the confrontation in my head. They'd been so sure I'd fold, that I'd give in like always. But watching their stunned faces as I walked away was a reminder of how much I'd changed. They could be angry, hurt, or embarrassed. It didn't matter anymore. I was done living my life to meet their expectations. The next day I got a call from Grace. "How did it go?" she asked, not bothering with pleasantries. I laughed, leaning back against the kitchen counter. "Exactly like you'd imagine. They're furious," Lauren's pouting, "and Mom is probably trying to figure out how to guilt me back into line." Grace let out a snort. "Let her try. You've got a backbone now, and I'm here to make sure it stays in place." I grinned, grateful for her unwavering support. "Thanks, Grace. Mean it. You've been my rock through all of this." "Any time," she said, her voice softening. "So what's next for you now that you're not playing family fixer anymore?" That question had been circling in my mind since the confrontation. What was next? 4 years, so much of my energy had been poured into trying to please my family, trying to earn their approval. Now that I'd let go of that burden, the possibilities felt endless and a little intimidating. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I feel like I get to decide. Not them, not anyone else. Just me." "Sounds like the start of something amazing," Grace said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Over the next few weeks, I started making small changes that felt significant in their own way. I redecorated my living room, swapping out the hand-me-down furniture from my parents for pieces that felt uniquely mine. I spent weekends exploring local cafes and parks, things I'd always meant to do but never made time for. And I started journaling, writing down my thoughts and dreams without filtering them through the lens of what anyone else might think. Each small step felt like reclaiming a part of myself I hadn't realized I'd lost. One evening I sat down with my laptop and opened the spreadsheet I'd used to plan the trip. The cancelled reservations stared back at me, and I didn't feel a pang of regret. Instead, I felt a surge of determination. That money had been meant for a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I wasn't going to let it go to waste. Closing the spreadsheet, I opened a new browser tab and typed solo travel ideas. A few weeks after my parents' return, I booked a solo trip to Italy. It wasn't the same itinerary I'd planned for them, and it wasn't about proving a point anymore. This was for me. A chance to celebrate my independence and finally put myself first. The moment I landed in Rome, I felt a surge of excitement and nervousness. I'd never traveled alone before, but as I stepped out of the airport and into the bustling city, I knew I'd made the right decision. I spent my days wandering cobblestone streets, marveling at ancient ruins, and indulging in meals at charming little cafes. There was no schedule, no one else to consider. Just me and the freedom to do exactly what I wanted. One afternoon, while sitting on the Spanish steps with gelato in hand, I pulled out the journal I'd brought with me. 4 years, I'd written about what I wanted to achieve, but those dreams were always wrapped up in making someone else happy. Now, as I wrote, the focus shifted: learn a new language, start a small business, travel to at least 5 more countries. The list grew, each goal a reflection of the life I wanted to create, not the one I'd been expected to live. On my last night in Florence, I had dinner at a small family-run restaurant overlooking the Arno River. As I watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt a deep sense of peace. This trip had been more than just a vacation. It was a turning point. I'd spent so much of my life trying to earn my family's approval, but here, thousands of miles away, I realized something important. I didn't need it. I was enough just as I was. When I returned home, my parents tried to reach out again, this time with softer tones and carefully worded messages. "Hope you had a nice trip," one text from my mom read. "Maybe we can all talk soon." I stared at the message for a moment before setting my phone down. I wasn't ready to reply, and that was okay. This time it would be on my terms. As I unpacked my suitcase and placed souvenirs on my shelves, I felt a sense of pride. A week after returning from my trip, I received a call from my mom. This time I answered. "Hi, Violet," she began, her tone unusually soft. "How was your trip?" "It was amazing," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "That's good to hear," she said, pausing as if searching for the right words. "We've been thinking a lot about what happened. Maybe we handled things poorly." The admission surprised me, but I wasn't ready to let her off the hook just yet. "Poorly? You replaced me on a trip I planned and paid for without even asking. Poorly is an understatement." "I know," she said quietly. "Your dad and we didn't realize how much it would hurt you." "And Lauren?" "Yes. Does she feel bad too, or is she still blaming me for ruining her vacation?" "She's upset," my mom admitted, "but I think she knows she could have handled things better." I sighed, leaning against the counter. "Mom, this wasn't just about the trip. It's about years of putting her first and expecting me to pick up the slack. I'm not doing it anymore." "I understand," she said after a moment. "We're going to try to do better. We don't want to lose you." Her words tugged at something deep inside me, but I'd learned enough not to let guilt dictate my choices. "I'm glad to hear that," I said, "but it's going to take more than words to fix this. I need to see real effort, not just apologies." "You will," she promised. "We'll give you the space you need, but I hope you'll let us back in someday." After the call, I felt a mix of emotions: relief that they were finally acknowledging their behavior, and skepticism about whether they'd actually change. But as I sat down with my journal that evening, I realized something important. Whether or not they changed wasn't my responsibility. Over the following months, I kept my boundaries firm. I responded to their calls and texts when I felt like it, but I didn't go out of my way to fix things or smooth over conflicts. Instead, I focused on building the life I wanted. I signed up for a photography class, something I'd always dreamed of doing but never had the time or energy for. I joined a local hiking group and even started planning my next solo trip. Each step I took felt like reclaiming another part of myself. One day, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I realized how far I'd come. I wasn't the person who bent over backward for people who didn't appreciate me. I was someone who valued herself, who set boundaries, and who wasn't afraid to stand up for what she deserved. I felt truly free.